What would you do if the man you loved stole $50,000 from you and smiled while doing it? My name's Elena Carter. I'm 34 years old and I work in cybersecurity out of Austin, Texas. Most days, my life is governed by quiet logic, network architecture, encrypted systems, fraud detection tools. I'm the kind of woman who backs up her backups and sleeps with a hard drive under the bed. But nothing in my professional training prepared me for the biggest breach of trust I'd ever face my own husband. His name is Ethan Carter, and he was the kind of man who made chaos look like charisma. Tall, confident, dangerously smooth. He walked into every room like the world owed him something, and more often than not, people believed it did. When we met, I was drawn in like everyone else. He spoke in dreams and promises plans for a business world travel passion projects that always seemed just one investor away. Meanwhile, I was grinding my way up in tech running simulations, securing financial networks, and keeping a steady paycheck flowing into our shared account. Looking back now, I realize I ignored every warning sign. The vague bank statements, the misplaced receipts, the sudden disappearances always followed by grand emotional apologies. But the real betrayal, the one that ended it all, came wrapped in Italian leather and arrogance. It was a Friday afternoon when he returned. The front door swung open, and there he was, grinning like a kid who'd just won a game no one else knew they were playing. He tossed his sunglasses onto the coffee table and stood in the center of the living room, radiating smugness, in a freshly pressed suit and pristine designer shoes. His luggage spilled open on the floor, bursting with luxury logos, Gucci, Montblanc, Berluti. He looked like a walking billboard for bad decisions. "Thanks for the upgrade, my dear," Ethan said with a wink. "First class to Europe. Private terrace suite in the Marais. You really outdid yourself this time." I blinked. Then I laughed, not nervously, not out of shock. I laughed like a woman who had already filed the paperwork and poured the wine. Ethan's smile faltered. "What's so funny?" he asked, confusion creeping into his voice. "Oh, Ethan," I said, shaking my head. "You really have no idea what you've done, do you?" He frowned, cocking his head like a confused puppy. "You're not mad, I echoed. "Why would I be mad? You got exactly what you wanted. The trip, the watch, the fantasy." I leaned casually against the kitchen doorway, arms crossed. My heart wasn't pounding. My palms weren't sweating. I felt calm, eerily calm. Because this wasn't some emotional ambush. This was the execution of a plan 7 days in the making, and he had walked right into it. Ethan kicked off his shoes like he was the king of Versailles. Seriously, though, you should have told me about that card ages ago. Imagine what we could have done together. I stared at him speechless for a moment anyway. Not because of what he said, but because of how casually he said it. Like $50,000 meant nothing. Like he hadn't violated the very foundation of our marriage. But instead of screaming, I just tilted my head. "How exactly did you think this was going to end?" He laughed. "You've always been uptight about money, Lena. It's not like you couldn't afford it. You're killing it at work. I figured you'd get over it, once you saw how happy it made me." Happy. That was his justification for draining a credit card tied to a program he knew nothing about. What Ethan didn't realize was that the card he used wasn't a personal card. It was part of a corporate fraud simulation tied directly to a federal detection system. I'd created it, monitored it, trained entire teams on how to track it. Every purchase he made, from the $1 $200 dinner in Paris to the $9,000 timepiece, was logged, time-stamped, and reported. The fool had no idea he wasn't a mastermind. He was a case study, and I was the author. He thought he'd scored the ultimate luxury hack, but while he was sipping champagne in Paris, I was quietly watching the walls close in. He thought I was asleep, but I'd spent my career preparing for this exact kind of breach. It was 2:07 a.m. when it happened. The house was silent, the kind of silence that feels thick in your ears. I'd gone to bed early after a long day at the office, but years in cybersecurity had trained my body to sense when something was off. I didn't hear a door slam or a creaky floorboard. What I noticed was the absence of sound, the pause before a mistake. Downstairs, Ethan was creeping like a teenager past curfew. He thought I was out cold. He always underestimated how deeply I was wired to notice patterns. And the second I checked the motion-triggered camera I'd installed in the hallway, ostensibly to monitor our elderly cat, I saw him, barefoot, shirtless, hovering over my laptop. My laptop, which I never left out unless I wanted someone to find it. I didn't confront him. Not yet. I simply watched. On screen, he opened the browser and navigated with practiced familiarity to my banking portal. I watched him snap pictures of my credit card information, card number, security code, expiration date, all of it. Then he softly closed the lid and tiptoed back up the stairs like a thief proud of his stealth. What he didn't know was that everything he just did triggered a chain reaction. Because that wasn't a real card. It was a sandbox training asset, a dummy card connected to my company's fraud detection simulation. I used it in monthly corporate workshops to teach employees how to handle internal breaches, and Ethan, my smug, reckless husband, had just become Exhibit A. The next morning, I played it cool. I made coffee, smiled like always, kissed his cheek on my way to work. Then I checked my phone. Fraud alert. 4800 high-end menswear boutique in downtown Paris. $1,260 Michelin star tasting menu in Le Marais. $7,400 business class upgrade and champagne package. The notifications kept coming, each one a red flag Ethan had gift-wrapped for me. But I didn't panic. I just smiled. By noon, I'd compiled the first 24 charges into a neat digital folder. I looped in my longtime friend and attorney, Chloe Bennett, with one short message. He took the bait. Want to grab coffee? When we met at our usual cafe downtown, I laid it all out. Chloe didn't even try to hide her grin. Wait, hold up, she said, nearly choking on her cappuccino. He used the fraud trap card, the one that pings federal monitors every time someone breathes near it. Yep, I said calmly, stirring my coffee. And he thinks he's a criminal mastermind. Chloe let out a bark of laughter. This is gold. I mean, you always did say his ego would be his downfall. He left this morning, I added. Just a note on the counter. Taking time for myself. Don't wait up. Let me guess, Chloe said, leaning back. He's using your card to treat himself to a week of pretending he's royalty. I nodded. And every charge is setting off alarm bells in 3 states. We shared a long look, the kind only 2 women can share when a trap has been set, bait taken, and consequences are en route. That night, I sat alone on the couch with my laptop. I didn't cry, I didn't drink, I didn't vent on a group chat. I simply watched Ethan live his best life. On borrowed time. $11,000 5-star hotel in the Latin Quarter. $2,900 bespoke shoes. $6,200 watch boutique known for black market resale. Each transaction confirmed it. He wasn't impulsive. He was entitled. Entitled enough to think I wouldn't notice. Entitled enough to believe I'd never fight back. But I wasn't planning to just fight. I was planning to document, expose, and dismantle everything he'd built on lies. He thought he was living the dream. I was building the case that would turn it into a nightmare. By the 3rd day of Ethan's European fantasy tour, his arrogance was in full bloom. He texted me photos, yes, actual photos from his hotel suite, lavish breakfast trays, velvet-lined watch boxes, a selfie in front of the Eiffel Tower with the caption, "We should do this more often, XOE." I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded everything to Chloe and our newest contact agent, Marcus Keller, a federal investigator specializing in digital financial crimes. He'd worked with my firm on previous fraud audits, and he knew my credentials well. When I told him the situation, I half expected him to think I was exaggerating. But once I shared the logs and transaction reports, his response was swift and borderline amused. "You're telling me..." He used a simulated fraud training card monitored by a federal-backed detection system to steal from you, and he thinks he's gotten away with it. Exactly, I said, scrolling through Ethan's Instagram story where he'd just tagged himself in a rooftop champagne tasting. He's bragging like this is Ocean's 11. Agent Keller let out a low whistle. Normally, we chase leads for months, but this This one's writing itself. Over the next 2 days, we built the perfect digital dossier. Every transaction from the dummy card was automatically logged with timestamps, GPS data, merchant IDs, and surveillance triggers. That's how the training program worked. It mimicked real-life fraud detection in real time, and Ethan was practically begging to be caught. But that wasn't enough for me. I wanted his own words. So when he strutted back through our front door that Friday evening, bronzed and beaming, trailing his suitcase full of stolen splendor, I let him talk and talk and talk. Paris was magic, he said, throwing himself dramatically onto the couch. The food, the people, the vibe. You should have come. I smiled subtle. Tell me everything. He did. He told me about the rooftop terrace with heated tiles, the wristwatch boutique where the clerk treated him like royalty, the hidden jazz club where he dropped $3 grand on rare scotch for a friend. Every sentence was a confession. And while he talked, my phone resting silently on the kitchen counter recorded every word. You should have told me about that card sooner, Ethan said, waving his wrist like a peacock flaunting feathers. It made me feel seen. I sipped my wine, nodding. Must have felt amazing. He grinned like a teenager. The best part. No one suspected a thing, not even you. I raised an eyebrow. He took my silence as admiration. He didn't realize it was calculation. That night, I sent the full recording to Chloe. Her response came within seconds. Perfect. We've got voice visuals, transaction logs, and federal backing. Let's move. The next morning, Chloe and I met for coffee to finalize the timeline. She came dressed like she was going into battle blazer, sharp phone in hand, eyes on fire. He's toast, she said without preamble. You've got more evidence than most corporate embezzlement cases I've seen. I want him to walk into it, I said quietly. No heads up, no confrontation, just a knock on the door. Chloe nodded. Agent Keller agrees. They're coordinating with local police for an in-home pickup. The more confident Ethan feels, the deeper the fall. I exhaled. Years of manipulation excuses emotional withdrawal, and now this man would finally feel what it was like to be held accountable. That night, Ethan lounged in the living room again, scrolling through his phone like nothing in the world could touch him. He was playing some mindless game, humming a song he probably thought made him look carefree. He had no idea. I stood in the hallway just out of sight, watching the back of his head and listening to the buzz of the TV. The weight in my chest wasn't grief. It wasn't fear. It was liberation. I pulled out my phone and texted Chloe 2 words, "Ready now." He thought he owned the room until the badge came out. That was the moment his fantasy finally collapsed. It was just after 6 p.m. when the knock came. 3 sharp measured taps at the front door. Calm. Official. I already knew who it was. I rose from the couch, took one last sip of tea, and opened the door. Standing on the porch were Agent Keller in a dark suit and 2 uniformed officers from Austin PD. No drama, no flashing lights, just quiet federal precision. "Good evening, Miss Carter," Agent Keller said, his tone professional but warm. "Is Ethan home?" I nodded, stepping aside. "He's right inside. Feel free to make yourselves comfortable." They entered without hesitation. Behind me, I heard the gentle click of holsters, the quiet shuffle of boots on tile. The atmosphere in the room shifted, thickening with the realization that something was deeply wrong. Ethan looked up from the couch, blinking, confused, then defensive. "What's going on?" he asked, sitting up straighter, as if posture alone could save him. Agent Keller stepped forward, unbothered. "Ethan Carter, you are under investigation for multiple counts of credit card fraud and unauthorized use of financial accounts. We'd like you to come with us for questioning." The air went still. Ethan's smug grin collapsed. "Wait, what? No, this has to be a mistake." He turned to me desperate. "Elena, say something. This is crazy." I crossed my arms, leaning against the wall with measured calm. "I don't know Ethan. You've been awfully busy lately. Maybe you should explain it to them." The officers approached. Ethan stood up fast, palms out. "Hold on, you can't do this. This is my house. She's my wife. Aren't you supposed to stand by me?" I didn't blink. Funny. I thought husbands weren't supposed to steal from their wives. Guess we're both learning new things today. His face flushed red, then pale. His voice cracked under the pressure. You set me up. No, Ethan, I said quietly. You set yourself up. I just let you. As they read him his rights and placed cuffs around his wrists, Ethan kept twisting toward me, still trying to bargain, still clinging to the fantasy that charm could save him. You won't get away with this, he hissed. I smiled, cool and steady. Oh, Ethan, I already have. The door closed behind them with a crisp click, leaving behind nothing but silence and the faint smell of expensive cologne still lingering in the air. For a long moment, I stood alone in the living room, staring at the space where he'd been. His duffel bag sat open on the rug, luxury items spilling out like confetti after a party no one enjoyed. And then, peace. Real, bone-deep peace. Not the kind you beg for. The kind you build one decision, one boundary, one hard-won truth at a time. An hour later, my phone buzzed. It was Chloe. He's in the interrogation room now, already spinning a sob story. You were right, he's claiming you gave him permission. I laughed. Of course he is. But don't worry, Chloe added. Between the fraud alerts, the purchase trail, and that lovely recording of him bragging, he doesn't stand a chance. The next morning, Agent Keller called. His tone was calm, but even through the phone, I could hear the tight satisfaction behind his words. We've got everything we need, he said. Your husband, soon-to-be ex, I assume, admitted to using the card. He's claiming he didn't know it was linked to a fraud detection system. Typical, I said. When in doubt, blame your wife. Keller chuckled. We're moving forward with the charges, multiple counts of fraud and unauthorized financial use. Given the amount of money involved, he's looking at significant consequences. And thanks to the buyer protection triggers, your accounts will be reimbursed in full. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. After all the manipulation, the excuses, the gaslighting, I wasn't just cleared, I was vindicated. His world didn't just collapse in court, it shattered in every room he once ruled. The fallout came faster than I expected. It started with whispers, then texts, then silence. By the end of the week, Ethan's life had been reduced to unanswered calls, frozen accounts, and one very public mugshot, the kind that circulates just enough for the people who matter to see it. His designer purchases confiscated. The flights he'd booked for future business trips canceled. His bank accounts flagged and locked. Apparently, the same charm he used to manipulate me didn't work on fraud investigators. And the woman I'd always quietly suspected, he was seeing behind my back Nicole, a digital marketer with a Chanel obsession and zero subtlety. She dropped him the second she saw the headlines. According to one of Ethan's mutual friends, Nicole's exact words were, I liked expensive, not indicted. I didn't even flinch. A few days later, my phone rang. The number wasn't saved. Out of curiosity, I answered and immediately regretted it. Elena Ethan's voice cracked through the line, low and frayed. I need to talk to you. I stared out the window, watching the golden afternoon light paint stripes across my floor. I didn't speak. Elena, please. I messed up. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I was just what I cut in ice behind every syllable. Just planning to steal $50,000 from your wife and hope she wouldn't notice. Just banking on my silence. There was a long pause on the other end, and then softly, I thought you loved me. My breath caught. I did, I said. I loved the man I thought you were, not the one who smiled while stealing from me. And with that, I hung up. A week later, Chloe called with the final update. He took the plea deal, she said. No jail time, but he has to pay every penny back and perform over 400 hours of community service. Oh, and his credit is officially a burning trash heap. Poetic, I murmured. He's banned from opening new financial accounts without direct approval for the next 5 years, she added. Honestly, I've seen white-collar criminals get off easier, but you played this perfectly. I leaned back on the couch, absorbing the finality of it all. No rage, no panic, just closure. For years, I'd believed Ethan was the one holding things together with his big plans, flashy charm, and wild ideas. Now I could see clearly. I was the foundation. He was just dead weight. The day the divorce papers arrived, I didn't cry. I poured a glass of wine curled up on the couch and opened the envelope like it was a permission slip to start over. The apartment was quiet now. No more late-night rants about his next big thing. No more scattered receipts or impulse-purchased business investments. Just me, a candle burning on the windowsill, and a newfound sense of peace. I looked around at the space that finally felt like mine. The kitchen I could organize how I wanted. The playlist that didn't get interrupted by his vibe checks. The closet that no longer smelled like overpriced cologne and failure. I thought about the moment he'd come home from Paris, drunk on ego, dripping in stolen labels, bragging about the upgrade I'd apparently gifted him. And I smiled, because the real upgrade was him being gone. Teaser. But this wasn't just the end of a marriage. It was the beginning of something better. Something Elena had never allowed herself to imagine. He took the lies, the money, and the spotlight. I kept the truth and walked away free. The first few days after the divorce were still. Not quiet in a hollow way, quiet in a liberating way. The apartment felt different, brighter. Like someone had pulled back a heavy curtain I didn't even know was there. Ethan's stuff was gone, what little he hadn't sold or crammed into his duffel bag on his way to infamy. No more clutter, no more chaos. Just me. My playlists, my favorite mug, and the kind of peace you don't realize you've been craving until you finally taste it. Chloe stopped by that week, dropping off the last of the settlement paperwork. She kicked off her heels, flopped onto the couch, and took a long sip of the espresso I handed her. "How are you feeling?" she asked, watching me closely. I thought about it. Strangely good. Like I finally opened the windows in my life and let all the smoke out. She smirked. "That's because you didn't just get out, Elena. You got out clean." He left with a criminal record, a mountain of debt, and a reputation no PR firm could fix. "I didn't even need to raise my voice," I said, almost marveling at it. "You raised something better," she said. "Your standards." That weekend I started redecorating. Nothing major, just reclaiming the space. A new coat of paint in the hallway. Soft blues, earthy tones. I changed the lighting, swapped out our old couch for a sleek velvet one I'd been eyeing for years, back when I used to talk myself out of things because Ethan might not like it. Funny how many decisions I used to make for his comfort, not mine. I booked a solo vacation to Oregon, just me, a hiking trail, and the sound of river water cutting through pine trees. For the first time in forever, I didn't feel like I had to explain myself to anyone. I didn't need permission. I didn't need to ask. I just went. Ethan tried to reach out a few more times, a half-baked email apology. A message passed through a mutual acquaintance, even a clumsy letter in the mail claiming he'd changed. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. What was left to say, he had made his choices, and I'd finally made mine. Some of our old friends tried to stay neutral. Others dropped me cold. But the ones who mattered stuck around, and more importantly, I didn't shrink myself for any of them. From what I heard, Ethan was bouncing between odd jobs. One friend told me he was working at a car dealership. Another said he moved back in with his parents in suburban Dallas. He was rebuilding, they said. I didn't care. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even curious. If anything, I was grateful. Because Ethan's betrayal had done something no therapy session or TED Talk ever could it force me to rebuild my life on my own terms. One night, a month later, I stood out on my balcony with a glass of wine. The city lights flickered below and a breeze moved gently through the trees. I was alone, but not lonely. For the first time in years, I felt whole. Not because someone told me I was, because I decided I was. I raised my glass to the stars. To me, I whispered, to the woman who saw it all coming and didn't flinch. Have you ever been underestimated by the person who claimed to love you, ever been dismissed, until you quietly flip the script, drop your story in the comments? I read every single one. And if you enjoyed this journey, Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to remember you don't need to scream to be powerful. Sometimes silence is the loudest revenge.